So today what the plan is to kind of review some of the systems project management issues and then jump into the case 3 study on eLearn that describes some of the project scheduling tasks. So I'll get logged in right now, and you can take a look at case study 3. Would that be crazy if that recorded at my actual typing? Okay, so then in the system analysis, section 3, we'll be talking about this particular case study. Now initially they wanted, and they mentioned this open workbench in the book, but as I was looking at open workbench, I saw that open workbench, although it's still there as a viable, apparently viable project management project, when you go to install it, oh look, I have an executable here. On my Mac, all I had was a zip I could download. Now when I visit it, I see an executable, so perhaps I have more to work with. But rather than make you learn Open Workbench, I think there's enough to learn just knowing Microsoft Project, and that's the most likely thing you'll encounter, and I'd recommend using it if you do some project scheduling. I'm just going to download this one just for fun, but I'm not going to, in the project itself, I'd change this from Open Workbench to Microsoft Project. I'm going to download it over here to my downloads folder. No, maybe I'll put it in the public. So if you do want to use it here, I'll put it in the public download on machine number 98 that we've been mapping a drive to, and I'll put it in the Microsoft section. No, I don't want to put Open Workbench in the Microsoft section. Let's see. Do I have any? There we go. Project management. Oh, look at there. I already had it there from last year. And the version hasn't changed from last year, making me think Open Workbench is done being developed. Another reason perhaps not to use it, to rely on it. Microsoft Project, I don't know if there's been major changes in it, but you'll probably encounter that more often than Open Workbench. In our case study, we're going to want to be looking at just a summary of the project management software and perhaps comparing it to some online. There's cloud-based project management software with free registration, free demo. You don't get all the cool features, but you can build Gantt charts, and we did a little bit with a program called Gantter, which we were pretty happy with. It meant you didn't have to go find the Microsoft Project disk and install it. We're going to be looking at some ideas about project scheduling and the idea of best case, probable case, and worst case, and there's a way to kind of balance that, make a most probable project schedule based on using the numbers you have from best, probable, and worst case. And it's a weighting little function, basically putting most of the weight on the probable case, taking into account what might be the best and the worst, and giving you an estimate. The main part of this is doing this part where we're going to be laying out project tasks, and they actually have an example of a couple, well, about 11 tasks or so in a typical software development project on page 104 and 110. So before jumping into this part and playing with Microsoft Project, let's review a few of the main concepts here and the whole idea of managing system projects. Now, I don't have a PowerPoint here. I just kind of like to skim through the book, and I've highlighted as I go through some of the important concepts, and the book itself gives you some bold text in those. We're spending more time using a specific tool to create Gantt charts and these PERT. Oh, what's CPM? Remember what CPM is? I think it's critical path measurement or something like or critical path management. And as we create Gantt charts, we're going to be looking at dependencies of one task. All this means is one task has to come after another task. Like you can't put the gadgets together until you have all your parts. So assembly is dependent on delivery and ordering of all the parts. Some fairly basic concepts there. But making sure that that is handled in your project schedule. And the cool thing about this project scheduling software is you can manage multiple parallel tasks and assign work, expected work from your resource people. And it doesn't have to just be people that are working on projects. It could be machines, machine time if it's a manufacturing kind of thing. You can assign resources. And that's something that the book doesn't mention in this case, but we'll take a look at that as well. Very useful for helping people manage multiple projects or membership in multiple projects. You can say, okay, I've got this person 50% of the time, and here's how that will affect my schedule. Software change control is an issue when you have a software project that's built into a program called Visual Source Safe. I think that's still part of Visual Studio, but we might touch on that. So I have to zoom out a little bit here to see my page turning arrows. Remember, the project coordinator, it's not the favorite job, but someone that knows projects can be very valuable. They're not paid enough because there's not enough good ones around. You don't realize how important the project coordinator is until you have a few failed projects and you realize, hey, we're all smart people, we're really good at programming, or really good at particular knowledge, but the person that gets it all going and scheduled and running, you can have as many smart people as you want, but if they don't work together and coordinate, they never get anything done. They have a lot of fun in the lab maybe and doing experiments, and maybe they're giving good research reports, but in the manufacturing or production environment, unless it gets something done, you're not making profit as a company. So these people become very valuable, and often being a project coordinator is a step on the ladder to higher level management, which in many companies moves up faster than the technical side. Not all the time, but often because the project coordinator is managing a lot of people, people realize how important they are and their management skills. They're often eventually a management, department head, plant manager. So you may not have goals to be a department head, but having management skills will give you at least more job stability, because they realize they don't want to lay you off because you're going to need to manage the people that are left if there's any major layoff. So it's not just about managing tasks, although this chapter kind of concentrates on the task we're managing. It's about managing people as well. And I'm hoping that someone from Emmaus is on average, and the average person from Emmaus, I'm hoping, is better than your average people skill person out there. No guarantee though. Sometimes we assume that because we're Christians we are more loving to people and can understand people. That's not always the case. But probably more, I'm hoping we're more loving, but that doesn't mean we have people management skills. Hopefully we recognize our own and have some humility when we realize we need to let someone else run the project. So for project managing, there is our PERT charts that we're going to be using Gantt for. And remember, you're keeping track of your workload of people and resources, and remember, your reporting to the people that are writing the checks to fund your project. And if you don't do that the proper reporting, they're going to say, wait, we haven't heard a project report, progress report. We're cutting your funding until you tell us how you're doing, because we have to answer to our investors that we're making progress on the different projects. So here's some examples of tasks that have to happen sequentially. And remember, dependent task just means this depends on this happening first. So this is always dependent on things previous to it in a line of a sequence. And one example of a list of tasks here could be just the project of getting the questionnaires done. You break down your project into little pieces. Just the task of breaking down a big task into smaller tasks is already helping people to work better, because a big task altogether can be overwhelming and people don't know where to start. Happens in my own home. Got to go clean the garage. Where in the world do I start? I just see the big mess. Well, one technique I learned from my mom, you kind of scan the garage. You start in one corner and you get that organized and then work around the room. Problem is, sometimes you start in one corner and the entire garage is connected to everything in that corner, and and you end up being one big job. What my mom would do is just rip everything out of the garage, put it in the front yard, and then one by one put things back. It looked like we had a garage sale going on. There's the idea that just throwing more people at a project doesn't make it happen faster, because it's more complex in how to get things done. People have to interact with each other and train the new people. I think they mention a law called the Brooks Law at some point here, that you can't just assume that adding more people makes it shorter. This guy says it actually made it longer because of the training needed and the time it took to get those new people on board. Here is the looking at trying to give a good estimate of the duration of a task by assuming a best case estimate, B. You think, oh, we're going to take 3 months. Probable case, maybe you just initially look at it, I'm guessing 4 months. And then someone says, wait a minute, what if we have a strike and the deliveries are slow? I'm saying it's going to take 8 months, worst case. That's double my initial guess. Well, one formula that people use is this little formula here of, okay, take your best case, take what you've first estimated as the probable, multiply it by 4. And that's this weighting that they're talking about here. Saying, okay, let's put the most weight on our guess of the probable. And let's keep in mind worst case. And if you look here, if these were all the same estimate, it would be 6 times our estimate. And then we divide by 6. So that means, okay, our initial estimate would be what this number comes up with. If these numbers are different, the 4p means I'm going to put most of the calculation based on is going to be affected by the p number. Divide by 6 then gives me some effect of the best and worst case, but mainly it's going to go with the probable case. Yeah, because just imagine if B, P, and W were all the same number, you would get 6 times that number, then divide by 6. That's why they're dividing by the total weights. So this has a 1 in front of it, this has a 4, this is a 1. So 1, 4, 1 add together gives me 6. Divide by my sum of my weights. So if we varied the weights, we would have to divide by the sum of the weights down here if we change this formula. I have never encountered this formula in the projects we did, but it's kind of one way of saying, okay, if we spend the time to kind of give these 3 case estimates, use this formula, you can maybe impress your boss that, hey, you've done some additional calculations to come up with the estimate. But once you get working on the project, you kind of throw out the estimates and you just look at, okay, how are we doing? Are we on time? Remember, all this is preliminary to actually doing the work, and we can't estimate the costs unless it's something we've done 10 times before. Like in construction, there hasn't been huge technology changes. You have the same team of workers. They're probably going to work faster the next house if it's the same design. But at some point, the workers can only get so much done. When you're dealing with new things in the technology, you can't estimate all the time. There's new tools. The tool says you're going to be able to do things faster, but it takes time to learn the new tool. And you might have not until your third project after that you're actually gaining the time benefit. That's the scary part of a lot of technical projects. It's a lot of fun research, but the project time, it's hard to estimate when you're doing something that no one's done before. And that's a big deal in the current technology. Software is constantly changing. I mean, just working with Microsoft products, there's constant updates and retraining on certain aspects of it. Rewriting software because they fixed some bugs, but also threw away the buggy software that you were using, and now you have to fix your software to work with the new things. Retest. Scary times when you're in software. That's one reason some people they get into software and they realize things can blow up pretty fast. High tension. I'm going to get out of this market and just go into management. When I was working at 3M, I was talking with one manager, and she was talking about her past software experience, and I asked her, why did you get out of software? And her answer was, well, software projects can blow up on you, and I realized I'd rather be a manager and not have to worry about the software suddenly becoming double the time I thought it was going to take because one little glitch showed up. And that can be a stressful situation. Can be exciting too. So if you have previous experience in projects, you can do your estimating a lot better. Constraints, sometimes new constraints come down, may actually cause some scope creep in your project. Usually though, if you're well managed, you keep in mind the constraints at the beginning planning. Don't let those things surprise you later on. Okay, so now we're talking about the Gantt charts. Rather than talk about them, that they've been invented 100 years ago by this guy named Henry, here is one specific task that may give us some ideas of what to put in an example task. But we want to modify it to relate to our particular case study of the TIMS providing courses for new students. Well, let's see, what of these tasks can we still use in our TIMS project and maybe add some additional tasks? We've got develop plan, assign task, obtain hardware. I'm not sure if we have a lot of hardware to obtain. There may be some actually construction if we're doing some classrooms. I can see some additional networking hardware. So part of this obtain, I would break this obtain hardware task into two tasks. I would break it into ordering the hardware and then receiving and having available. Ordering and receiving, that's a big unknown, especially if you have a lot of parts to order. Some parts come in 2 days. You may suddenly come across one part that, oh no, it's a special order and it's going to take a month. That suddenly becomes a product or a part on our critical path, because look at all the parts of our project that are dependent on having that. It looks like install hardware can't be done until we have it, right? I would actually break obtain hardware probably into 3 pieces. One is making the list and agreeing on what hardware is needed, determine what hardware is needed, then order that hardware, and then the delay for receiving. So here's a good list. I'll leave that up there, and let's get now laying out a plan like this in Microsoft Project. So let's kick off Microsoft Project. If you don't have it, we have it available here on the public share on this machine. And let me give you that information while I'm here. I'll just put it on the screen. Where's my notepad? There. Remember, all the software available on this machine is this server. This is the instructor's desk. And the share is called public with a $sign. Why did I put the $sign there? Windows shares, if you have a $sign in the name, they're not automatically browsable. I can't go browse the network to this IP address. If I didn't have the $sign there and I had this shared, you would see that public directory. I just make it a practice of putting the $sign there, so you have to know the link. You can't just go hunting for it. Part that's kind of just a security paranoia I have, just in case there is a virus or a bug in the Windows sharing, which there are known bugs, security issues. It makes it a little harder for some virus out there to go hunt for public shares and then install itself on them. So it's good practice to make Windows shares not automatically browsable by adding a $sign. I think you can put it anywhere in the name and it'll be a hidden share. So that's the share, and we might as well start with a new project, and it brings it up to here. Now we saw this before where I was able to crash Windows, crash Microsoft Project. Crashing Windows, that'd be a horrible thing. And in our case study, let's go back to our case study, we have been asked to create a magic project with 10 tasks. Now, Jesse asked an imaginary project. I don't have, they didn't specifically say the Tim's project, but we could use that as our project goals and tasks, because that'll help have prepare us for the overall system report, which will include this project plan. And remember, all the projects in this book and this whole course, they build up on each other. So as we complete these, we're going to save what we've done for later on when we do our operation manual. We can use this material as the history of and development of our project. We can actually have this in there in the whole development plan. And the final report will say this is the project plan we used to develop this system. So I'm going to, although it's an imaginary project, I'm going to put the 10 tasks in there somewhat related to our Tim's project, and we may come back and maybe in the next chapter, I'm not sure if they want us to refine it or make a separate Tim's plan. So let's put in 10 projects. We have blank task names. We can simply add task names here. And in the book here, we have some of these tasks that we can use to and then modify that. So might as well use those tasks. I'm going to put this over to the side. Let's see if I can do this. I split the screen in half. And I'll shrink our project so I can see my tasks there while I add them here. Now I'm going to have an overall task name for everything, so I'm going to call it my Tim's project. And everything under here I'm going to indent as subtasks of the Tim's project. So I'm going to indent my first task. Oh, I guess I have to have it there before it'll let me indent. Let's go ahead and put in the same task names, and I can come back and modify them. Boy, my typing is way ahead of the program for some reason. So all these tasks from 2 to 12, for now, I'm going to make them subtasks. So I'm clicking here, shift clicking here, and then I'm hoping I can indent them. Let's see. Yes, and now see how the Tim's project now is in bold. Now some of these, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to make this one a multiple part project. So watch what I do. I'm going to, let's see, can I move these down? Let's see if I can grab them and move them down. 1, 2, 3. See if it lets me. It's thinking. There. Huh. That was weird. Okay, I'm going to make 3 pieces of obtaining hardware. I'm going to have select hardware. Then it will be order hardware. And then receive and assemble. Having trouble there with getting it subtask? I grabbed in the gray. In order to move multiple, I clicked on the gray, and then I shift clicked it on the gray, and the last one. I had to drag it from the bottom. If I dragged it up here, it didn't actually move it. Now these, I want to make subtasks of obtaining hardware. So I select that, shift select that one to 5, 6, and 7. Now I can indent that again. And now see how obtain hardware now is like a subtask with multiple pieces. And we did this with the patio project. I added different things underneath each part of the patio: planning, analysis, design, implementation, operation. So here we have subtasks and subtasks. And unless we break it down, we'll leave it as a standalone task. If I ever come across one and realize, wait a minute, that has multiple parts, remember what you can do. Just add more tasks beneath it, indent it, and then the programming or whatever you're breaking into small pieces becomes a heading for a main task. And if you look over here in the Gantt part of it, you'll see a little bar up here with that name if I stretch it out. I think I can stretch out the time. Oh. Got to be careful how I grab things. I crashed it last time when I was pulling things too quickly. Before I do anything more, I'm going to save this, and I think I'll save it to my OneDrive. It's been cooperating. My OneDrive for this course. Uh-oh, a little bit more of a delay this time than I had last time. Maybe Microsoft servers are a little slower today. This is the longest delay I've had so far with my OneDrive. And so this is my Manning Case 3. I'll just call it Manning Case 3. Project planning. Okay, so it saved it. Now, with the other project planning software, I can adjust my sub-items by dragging them. It looks like I can't drag this. I'm thinking this bar all depends on the length of its subtasks, which have no icon yet because there's nothing in there. The other project planning software I've used would put a default of 1 in here as duration. And then it would appear over here. And then you can grab it when it's over here and increase its duration. And here I can set the start time manually, or drag it around and it will change my start time here. Now, the Gantt project that's online, I could grab my little line over here and stretch it for duration. Yeah, that's stretching the duration. You just have to grab it in just the right place. Grab the little end arrow. Now see how duration is being stretched. So I can graphically adjust my duration or manually enter my duration here. Now, before I can assign tasks, I have to develop my plan. So to make this dependent on the previous one, I finally figured it out. Just in the graphical part, I can click in the center of this task and then drag down to the next one. A little chain link will appear. That will make it a dependent task. Now it pushes that one over. It can't start until this one has started. Now sometimes I can start a task while it's dependent on may be partially done. So I can, in my predecessor information, I can add some sort of delay in there, and I'm seeing where that delay could be. I could make it this guy starts with a delay after this one starts, instead of making it completely dependent on this one being completely finished. And that's in the details here of my start time and predecessors. If I click on let's see what happens. If I double click on this task, there I can get in the detailed information and enter some more information about this, actually assigning resources to my tasks. They don't talk in the book about assigning resources to tasks, but this is where you actually can determine what people are working on particular pieces, keeping track of how much of their time. It will calculate the cost if I put in resources and their hourly pay rate. So we'll come back to that after laying out our plan. Here's the leg. I forget how leg works, but you have more details here in this whole task information. Remember, I can get to this just by double clicking on any task. It takes me to the detailed task information. But let's get our task laid out first, then we can play with the details. So selecting hardware, let's just say that over the course of a week we'll have decided what hardware we're going to get. So don't just put in the estimate here of how many hours of man time it's going to take. Think calendar days. Oh, and I should have put for a week, I should have put 5 days instead of 3 days. A week is 5 working days. Once we have the hardware selected, now I can order it, and the ordering, once we have the list, I don't think that's going to take very long. But for it to get here, now this is where you have to do a conservative estimate here. Let's put 30 days. Some parts will come in 2 days, some may take a month because they're actually going to have to manufacture them. Now to make them dependent, this time I'm going to do it manually over here. Just put in the number of the task for the predecessor. So the predecessor for this one, we could just make task number 5 and hit enter. I can have this depend on multiple predecessors. I could say this also depends on task number 3 being complete. So I can do 5, I think I do 5, 3. Let's see if that works. 5, 3. And did it do it? I was expecting this to have to move over. Oh, look at that. That one is dependent on 3. See how this guy moved over? Because we made him dependent on both this one and this one. So multiple predecessors for that particular project, or part of the project. Now you can see I'm probably not going to be selecting hardware until I've developed my plan. So let's make this guy dependent on 2. Now see how these guys moved over? And I can see that multiple dependencies are being shown by these little curly arrows. Now I could probably do it graphically, but you can see as it gets more detailed, the manually entering the predecessors here might be a little easier to understand. So receiving hardware, I'm going to put that again as dependent on it being ordered. So I'm going to manually make number 6 a predecessor to 7. And your typical project, you'll go top to bottom, the things that happen soonest. If you have multiple projects or multiple pieces happening at the same time, you may have a sub-project and then another sub-project that over here you might actually be seeing them going in parallel. Notice anytime you make a task a sub-project to something else, you get this bar, named bar, for that task where you can't modify his duration. His duration is determined by all his subtasks. So once you come over here, you notice this guy has no duration. This is calculated duration based on its subtasks. And I can, and of course, Microsoft Project will let you actually manually enter your schedule, but usually I let it auto schedule based on my durations. So I will leave auto schedule set. You can come back and manually tweak it, but at this point you probably want to let Microsoft Project figure out your schedule based on the durations you put in there, rather than you having to remember, oh, I have to manually schedule things. You can always switch back and forth and manually drag things around, and it'll put little fuzzies around things that it thinks maybe it needs some adjusting. Okay, so we've got subtasks, and now we just need to make these with some duration, so they're actually some kind of active project, and then dependencies here. Now, I think we can do programming and hardware installation at the same time. Programming, though, is probably going to take more than one day. Let's increase his duration. I'll do it manually over here. Let's make the programming 30-day. That's a short program. And remember, that's actually 6 calendar weeks. And I think, oh, actually no, it's showing calendar days here. I think somewhere in the options you can tell it to skip weekends and not count them in as in our days. And we'll come back to that. I think that's in our project settings. We can be installing some hardware while the programming is happening, so that may not be dependent on programming. But we can't install it until we've obtained it. So we'll go install. It's going to take us, we'll call it 5 working days. But we'll make that dependent on our hardware being here. So we'll make that dependency number 4, because I could make it depending on receiving hardware, but in case I add different subtasks to obtain hardware, I'm just going to make this dependency of I can't install it until the obtain hardware with subtask is done. So I'm going to make his dependency number 4. I think I would get the same schedule if I made his dependency number 7, since it's the last task of obtain hardware. But I like giving it, I'm depending on that whole task being done. And over here, let's see what that looks like. It shows the connection to that little bar instead of the blue bar of the last task of obtain hardware. Now, your best guess scenario, notice we see a critical path here developing, that we can't do anything with hardware until this is done. This is why this is going to be called the critical path. If we adjust our receiving all the hardware, that's going to affect our main project. If I adjust what task here is not going to affect our main project. Well, everything right now is in the critical path, it looks like. We'll find some projects that may be not in the critical path. Right now, since this doesn't have any dependencies yet, this is not yet in the critical path. But I think it's going to be somewhere along the line as we add the correct dependencies. And get our spelling right in our user manual. And his dependency, let's see, is he dependent on anything? I think we can get our writers to work at least by the time we have developed our plan. There may be some necessary programming having been done first before we can write the complete user manual. So let's do, this is dependent on number 3. Let's see, can I put my, there's my predecessors here. I can put number 3, I think, here. Let's see if it'll let me do that. Look at that. I add the number, it automatically puts that in there. And let's put in another predecessor. Let's do the programming, number 8. Oh, and here's the leg. I can start, let's see, if I make, I think I can make this negative, that I can start 10 days before the whole programming task is done. There's the leg. I think that's how I can say, before it's done, I can start 10 days into it. Let's see if that shows up right. Look at that. I can start my writing the user manual 10 days before the programming task is done. So this shows you how I can start a task in the middle of another task. I don't have to have it only wait till the complete end. That's the leg part. And I'm going to increase the user manual because that's kind of going to be ongoing. And this one's hard because it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to happen as other things are done. But for now, I will put an estimate of, how about 30 days for writing the manual. Actually, I think I can write the manual sooner. I'm going to say 2 weeks of writing. And this is where it gets tough because I can estimate 2 weeks of work, but calendar-wise, it's probably going to be broken up. So 2 weeks, 10 days, 10 man days of work is my estimate of the amount of work. And maybe there's a way to actually break it up into the time of needed for resources versus calendar time. Maybe I'd have to break it up into multiple pieces, like complete the programming part of the manual and then complete the assembly part of the manual and maybe the user guide. Those would be maybe 3 subtasks of the writing the user manual that I could come back to and adjust my writing user manual. Programming testing, let's estimate a week for that. User training, we'll take a week for that. System test, let's try a day for our system test. And then a user test, even though it may be 1 day's worth of work, calendar-wise, I'm going to have multiple people testing different days, so I'm going to put a week of days for that. Now, predecessors, let's see here. User manual, we've got some predecessors. Oh, look at the format. When I went into the leg, it put it in this extra format. I could have probably typed that out here, but double-clicking on the task and putting the leg in. Oh, that's the finish to start parameters. Program testing can't happen until the programming is done, so I better put task number 8 there. And let's see, I'm going to go to my user training. Can I, oh look at that, I can get a selection list. I thought that might be nice. I can go into my selection list of my task name and say, okay, can't do the user training until, let's say, I've done a, oh these are alphabetic, which I guess I just have to know. Let's see, what's my user testing dependent on? Probably that my program's been tested. User training. So click there. Look at that. It puts in the right ID. And I could have just typed number 12 there. System test. Let's do that after our program testing. Let's make that also dependent on 12. And then user test. We can't do that until they have been trained and the system has been tested. So let's go ahead and put 14. So generally it's in sequence with multiple tasks. So there is our, let's see if we've satisfied Jesse's requirements here of laying out task here. Where's my assignment here? Let's see, we've got imaginary project, we've got 10 tasks. Yeah. We've got some dependent, multiple predecessor, and multiple successor. Let's see, do we have multiple predecessors? Yeah, that's multiple predecessor. Multiple successor, yes, 12 has multiple successors. So we've satisfied that. Create a list showing the task and dependency. Lay it out on paper. We'll let our Microsoft project do that.
Is there a way for us to upload this to, like, can we upload it to Bring?
Yeah, let's, now that we have a plan here, let's see if we can export it as some kind of a chart or PDF. I think we can probably do a print to PDF at least. So let's see what it lets us do. Before I do anything, I'm going to do a save since I've done lots of work here. Let's see here. I can view, this is my Gantt chart. Let's see, what can I view here? I can view the Gantt chart. Let's see, what's task usage? That's not it. Where is my PERT chart? Is this a PERT chart? There's like my PERT chart. That's the network diagram. This is essentially the PERT chart, and I think I can control roll out and get my task list. This is my network diagram of the tasks. Notice it automatically highlights in red my critical path. The things that if I change any time in these, it affects my ultimate completion of my task. I can always go back to my Gantt chart, pop in between. Let's see, the task. This shows just the general task, the work needing to be done. And multiple views. Now one thing I want to do here, back looking at the Gantt chart part, I want to tell it that I don't work on the weekends. I seem to recall that's not too hard to adjust. Somewhere in, let's see, is there some settings? Let's right click. Is there settings for my project? Maybe it's in my project settings. Let's see, let's look at options. Schedule. Where's that? Oh, there. There we go. And it does show non-working on the weekends. Oh. Yeah. Let me go back. Maybe it did it when I went to, let me check. Maybe it already did it. When I do auto schedule, let's see. This one, it's showing a duration of 3 days.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it doesn't.
This one's showing a duration of 4.5 days. This one did skip the weekend, but this one didn't. Maybe because I show it starting at the end of Friday. Maybe that's why it thinks it's 3. But the auto schedule did have this one skip the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like it is working. This one's a little odd. It's showing like I'm only working Monday, Tuesday. It has a duration of 3. I would have expected it to go one more day. So we have our tasks laid out. List of tasks. Now, can we get a list showing tasks and dependencies? Right now, it's a project file. But if I wanted to send a report to my boss or to my team members, we can't expect them to all have project on their PCs. So let's see what we can do to export this. I'm hoping I can print it to send it to a PDF here. Let's try. File, print.
If you export, you can create a PDF.
If I do a print to PDF, I have to have my PDF printer. So let's try the export. So file, export. There I can create my PDF there. Let's see what it looks like. I'm going to save it in my same location. Huh, it didn't go to my same location.
I guess if you print them all out, you might side by side.
Yeah. So project plan PDF. Let's see what it looks like once I've published it. So upload your project. I'll make it so you can upload multiple files there in the settings for that. I don't remember. Let's see. Let's just edit the setting. Just make sure you can send me multiple files. Remember, if it's always one file and I haven't set it for multiple, you can always zip things together. And let's see, I have 2 uploaded files. I'll change that to 3 in case you have more.
Four, 'cause there's 4 things.
Is there 4 things?
Yeah. Well, I think, let's see, there's a template.
Why is my upload limit at 1 megabyte?
There's a couple of these things on the same page.
I'll set it to 5 files. I'm seeing a problem with my maximum submission size of 1 megabyte. I better fix that. And I think that may be in the actual class settings. And I'm pretty sure on the site I made a big limit for total files. So let's go to course. Let's see if that's a setting in my course. Look at that, my maximum upload is 256 for the course. So why would my activity... Why would that activity have a limit of 1 meg? That's going to be a problem. File submission. Activity upload limit. So there must be another activity upload setting in my course. I'll see if I can fix that for you. Now, back in the description, can we go back and basically make a spreadsheet that uses that task estimate formula? And remember, it's the worst case plus 4 times the probable case plus 1 times the best case, all divided by 6. So I would just make a short little spreadsheet that had 3 columns, and then the 4th column would be your estimate based on the formula. So go ahead and start a spreadsheet while I go see if I can fix my settings here. I'm thinking it's a setting in my course, somewhere activities are limited to 1 meg. Well, that's strange. I don't see any limit there. I might have to do a little research on that, why it's limiting that activity. So we started with this table of suggested tasks. We modified it on our own, adding a few extra tasks, subtasks. And as we look into this particular case study, we can come up with many more tasks relating to the actual TIMS case study. I'm going to do a little research on that file upload problem with that assignment. Do a little search here. Yeah. Yeah. So for the spreadsheet, it'd be a pretty simple spreadsheet. Let me bring that up. I would make a spreadsheet of what does she call it? Like project completion estimate. Look at, man, my system is just slow. I wonder if it's the recorder that's slowing me down. So have worst case, probable, and best case. And then we'll call the calculated. And remember the formula. I could even put the formula up here. It's W plus 4P plus B quantity all divided by 6. Yeah, it's kind of weird. In the book there, let's look at that formula. The P is your probable case, and what you're estimating is an estimate based on a probable case, as well as your worst and best. So you're not the probable case isn't our calculation. It's a kind of our best guess, but then we're letting the calculation combine that with the worst and best case. Yeah, this is all manual here. These three are just you manual. You say, well, if there was a strike, shipping would take a long time, or what if we can't find that programmer, or worst case, something breaks. You get the cynical person to give you the worst case. So let's just say we're going to a worst case of 30 days. Probable, we'll say 40 days. Sorry, worst case is a longer time. That would be let's say 80 days. Best case, let's say 20 days. Half the time you think. Now calculated would just simply be that formula. Worst case plus probable times 4 plus best all divided by 6. I could make this even more complex by actually having our weights 1, 4, and 1 be selectable. So if I want to do it more complicated, we'll call it complex version, or we'll do our weighting. Our weights are in that row, and then our estimates are in this row. Would be worst, probable, and best. And now I'll do the same numbers. Let's say 80, 50, and 30 for a different project. But now if our weights are going to be slightly different, let's just say I'm going to be more optimistic and weight the best, give it a weight of 2, where the worst and probable I'm getting the same weights I had before of 1, 4, and 1 and 4. Now on my calculation, I would use my weights as part of my calculation. So it's the weight for worst, absolute value. Oops, sorry, I forgot the equal sign. Equal the weight, F4, absolute reference to that, times my worst case, plus the weight for probable, absolute reference, times my probable guess, plus the weight of best, reference the weight, times the best estimate. What do I divide by this time? Well, since my weights might be different as I mess with them, I'm always dividing by the sum of my weights rather than a 6. This was for weights. The 6 is only valid if I'm having a weights of 1, 4, and 1 of my worst, probable, and best. If I want to have a variable weights, I now need to divide by the sum of those weights, all in absolute reference. So if I have other calculations, let's put the same project in and see its effects. So let's make the same project 80, 40, and 20, and let's see the effects. If I put more weight on the best estimate, see how my calculated time goes down here? I'll let you see that formula. But I allowed it to adjust the weights. So now if I make this a 1, it'll be the same as the previous formula. Oops. So if I made this back to a weighting of 1, I should get the same number as the one above. Yep. This is just a way it lets me adjust my weights. So this one I'm going to put in parentheses here. Allows for weighting adjustment. The first formula assumes a 1, 4, 6 because I'm using 1, 4, and 6 right here in my calculation. Just hit F4 when you're typing in the cell reference, and it automatically puts the dollar signs around it. So here's the weight. I'm multiplying the weights just in case someone says, you know, I trust the person a little more and their best estimate. Okay, let's put more weighting on that estimate, and then I can come up with a calculated project completion. And the number should go down because we're putting more weight on the best guess. Now that's just giving me a little more flexibility using this particular formula, adjusting my weights right there. Now I'm not sure how many project managers actually go with a worst, probable, and best, and then do a calculated. I'm thinking their probable is taking into account the worst and best. The nice thing about having a formula is if things go wrong, you can point to the formula and say, wait a minute, I was using some reasonable, I just wasn't picking numbers out of the air when I was coming up with my estimate for the time. The thing you want to keep in mind is when you're estimating projects, you don't want to push your schedule. You don't want to miss the schedule. So you always want to do a conservative estimate and don't be too optimistic. You'll look bad even if you had a good system, but you came in late. It's always going to be a black eye on your project management. So you always be conservative. That means you go with a longer time. Just so it's a lot better to say we came in ahead of schedule than we came in behind schedule. So if you're wrong, you want to be wrong on got it before the estimate. Well, that's it for today. A little practice there with Microsoft Project. That's a great program to have available. Question? Sure. This one right here? And basically what that's doing, you'll see if I zoom out, well, I don't want to zoom out too far, you won't be able to read it. It's just including the weights, allowing me to adjust my weights from the standard 141. This would let me adjust my weightings. If I stretch out a little more, it'll all fit on one line here. Does that formula make sense? Well, we'll stop the recording there. See if that's what's been affecting my